problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds. Of course, and soon to be COVID-free paradise. Touch wood though. The big announcement today from New Zealand is a day with no new cases of COVID-19. Not one. Zilch. Not one. 10,000 new cases just today in Russia. Perspective is a beautiful thing to realise how lucky we are. But now it's time for business time. The hard end of the stick for the whole of our country, which is facing up to the matters that matter most. Now it's about economic survival. The relationship between every part of New Zealand with the primary industry, our food producing industry and our export sector that still has some light at the end of the tunnel, is about turning our attention to the rural economy that is being relied on so heavily in the news. That's going to be the thing that gets us through. But what happens if that is also under threat and it makes the government's economic recovery plans fairly dicey to rely on an industry that it has demonstrated, I don't believe, it knows how to support. We've got Damien O'Connor for the first time on the new Daily Live show, and it's been over a month since I've caught up with Damien. He used to be fortnightly on my weekly podcast before we went live. He is the Minister of Agriculture, of course, here in New Zealand, joins us on Serious Country after 7:40. I'd love your questions for him below in the comments wherever you're watching across all the different platforms and across the websites, of course, as well. I've already had today lots of questions for Damien pour into the inbox, so I will certainly get to those. Now, I want to talk about the 50,000 jobs we've been talking about now in the primary sector that we've been struggling to fill. Is this the opportunity now with the rising unemployment to be able to redeploy people into our biggest export earner? How can we get the sale yards reopened with the mounting animal and farmer welfare issue that is mounting across the country of what is going to be one of New Zealand's worst droughts in history? And is that support by the government targeted enough? It leads us to our poll tonight over on Farmers Weekly's Facebook page. And of course, if you want, it's also underneath on sarahperham.com, farmersweekly.co.nz/Serious Country. So you can participate in the poll. The topic for the poll tonight is the New Zealand primary sector getting the financial and regulatory support it needs to pull our economy through this recession. Now, as I go over here to check the results, 89% of you say no. We're not getting that. That's with over nearly 300 votes. 11% say yes, there is enough support for our primary industry to pull our economy through. And one thing that's really good is Daniel Mickelson posted underneath, and I want your ideas on this. He said, okay, so what sort of support do you want the government to provide? We don't want to end up like other countries with a dependency on subsidies. So if you are there, I'd love your ideas and thoughts, and I'll be reading them out throughout the show as well. You know what is giving the land some support though? Rain. Not everywhere, I do know that, but so many places across New Zealand got well-needed dose. And I just want to warm up your thumbs. I want you to create we're going to create a super large national rain gauge tonight across the course of the show. I want you to add the rain amount that you got over the last 48 hours or lack of, and what location. I'd love you to blow up the comments. I would love to see some high numbers there in regards to the much needed rain. And as I saw this afternoon, the old snow's rolling in the Crown Range and the Lindis Pass as well. Now, if you've just tuned into Serious Country for the first time, either listening on demand on podcast right now, or of course our live show, this is created in alliance with the great people at Farmers Weekly. And I just want to say good on you, mate, for taking the time to join us and be a part of what is now the rapidly growing population of Serious Country. They're people who love engaging directly with each other and our guests live every night, Monday through Thursday from 7 o'clock. Our audience are one that care about feeding prosperity and our people with open hearts and open minds. And of course, it's about talking about those matters that matter most. So, what is coming up tonight on Serious Country? After 7:20, we learned something that may be new to all of you. It's called listening to your wife. It could save a life. You can do a lot of things when you listen to your wife, but we would be here all night, to be honest. So we'll stick to saving your life, which is kind of a big deal. That is a message coming from a newly launched New Zealand initiative, Plant a Seed for Safety, and we'll be joined by the Australian founder of that, Alex Thomas, and New Zealand's Safer Farms representative, Harriet Bremner. A gentle, generous man sadly passed near Auckland a few years back, and he bequeathed his farm to the New Zealand Young Farmers Organisation that looks to continue and operate it as a best practice commercial dairy farm, with a future aim to utilise the farm and the way in which it's operated as an outdoor classroom for a neighbouring Auckland community. We're going to be joined after 7:30 by the new manager after a long search, Sam Waugh, who originates from the Manawatu. We kick off the show tonight, though, progressing with the celebration of our environmental stewardship in New Zealand, and it's with the Waikato Ballance Farm Environment Award winners, Mark and Felicity Brough. Native birds have returned, the water quality has improved since they took over the property 20 years ago. I'm really looking forward to hearing about the couple's respect for land, animals, soil and water. But before we're joined by the Broughs, we want to hear their story. And here is a video supplied for you to watch from the New Zealand Farm Environment Trust.
Large dams with wetland areas have been created, and the couple is planning to fence off significant blocks of mature native bush. Poplar poles control erosion, almost all paddocks have water troughs, and beehives encourage clover growth. The judges were impressed with how the Broughs are approaching upcoming regulatory changes such as freshwater standards, embracing them as a positive step for both themselves and the farm. Mark and Felicity have strong off-farm connections, both locally and nationally, and are keen to help other farmers learn from their successes as well as their failures. As they strive to be successful and profitable environmental farmers, the Broughs are very focused on preserving the precious resources that make farming possible, soil and water. Their focus on water was noted by the judges, who said a stream cutting through the property runs clear, even after rainfall. Judges' comments. An innovative biosecurity map indicates where significant species live. Mark and Felicity are heavily involved in their community, both locally and nationally. Land use is carefully matched to land capability on the property. Paerua is a credit to the hard work of this couple.
How great was that? Congratulations, we must say first on behalf of everybody that's watching and listening to our next guests on the Waikato Regional Ballance Farm Environment Award win. Now, native birds, there's fish and invertebrates that are flourishing on the Broughs property thanks to extensive planting around streams and ponds, significant fencing of waterways and drains. 2 large dams with wetland areas have created the couple, what the couple have done in terms of establishing significant blocks of mature native bush. Now it's time to head to Waitomo in the Waikato to the sheep and beef farm that we've just seen there, taking up that not only the regional trophy but several smaller awards as well. Mark and Felicity, thank you for taking the time to come on Sarah's Country tonight.
Hi Sarah, yep, thanks for having us.
And congratulations, as we just said. Can you just explain to us about the early days at Paerua and your ambitions for the farm and what you sort of set out 20 years ago to achieve?
I think it's been a bit of a journey. You learn as you go. 20 years ago, we were thinking about how would we wanted to be seen as farmers. And one of the things was, let's do something that not everybody is doing. So we did start a long time ago. It hasn't been a 5-minute wonder sort of thing.
That is the main thing with the environmental stewardship that a lot of people don't really understand is, one, it can't happen overnight, and it's a long time in the making. And of course, obviously, you have lots of trials and tribulations along the way. What were some of those challenges?
Probably when you start, like we started with one tiny little pond, and some things grow and some things don't grow. So it's learning about what works in your country side, what works in your environment.
And obviously we're going to touch on the fact that the Ballance Farm Environment Awards, sadly I got to attend the physical Canterbury one just before lockdown, and then of course it's been announced virtually. It must be disappointing to obviously not have that sort of time in the sun after 20 years of hard work of coming to that point.
Yeah, it was a bit of a disappointment. I mean, it's probably more of a disappointment for the people that were organising the event. I mean, you've got to give kudos to them to get 300 people together, all the catering and that would have had to been cancelled. You know, the sponsors, you know, without them, there would be no award. And so how do we give them recognition for what they've done? You know, Balance in particular, you know, what a great thing for them to sponsor.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it's a recognition that's been going on now for a long time with the New Zealand Farm Environment Trust and the work and being able to highlight the great work that farmers are doing, but also to be able to show other farmers that it's really possible. What would be some of your sort of top tips and advice for people being able to make that environmental transition?
I think it is about starting small. We had a lot of support and encouragement from the Regional Council. They were really good. They know about what sort of plants to plant. They suggested like you start where you can see them. So it's about taking small steps, and then you've got something to see, and you then when you see it happening, you get more and more into it.
Mm. Must be very satisfying as it's all developing.
Yeah, it is. You know, I believe that biodiversity is the biggest visual measure of the environment. You know, if you see a lot of new native birds coming in, you know, the tuna, the kakahi, all those sort of things reappearing, the environment must be doing better.
It also makes your farm a nicer place to live. Because when you're driving along on the bike and that sort of thing, you've got shaded areas so you can see the plants growing. It's really pretty, and you can see the birds and the plants, and you know you spot another big fat pigeon in the tree or something like that. It just makes you enjoy where you live.
What sort of impact has it had on in terms of like profitability and having that increased biodiversity? Obviously, when you're increasing things like bees for pollination and bird life and things, they do sort of interact with your farming system differently.
Yeah, they do. I mean, by fencing off our waterways and fencing off native bush and things, it's probably improved our profitability. You know, we haven't had to drain some of our drains for over 10 years with drain diggers. So that's a big cost saving. You know, we don't pull sheep out of the drain and cows out of the ditch, you know, so you don't have all those losses as well. You put fertiliser on to the edge of the fence, not half it doesn't go in the creek because there's a clear visual barrier where fertiliser should go, things like that. Yeah, I think it really improves your profitability.
Yeah, it's fantastic to be able to discuss that and just some of those really practical things that you've just said there. Mark, you're heavily, and I'm sure Felicity as well, involved in local and central government conservation work with, of course, Mark's explained to me, the New Zealand Conservation Authority. What's your experience been in this, say, for instance, current government's understanding of how environmental and economic can go hand in hand?
I think people are really starting to value the environment, you know, in this COVID lockdown. People are starting to really think, what is important to me, you know, and the environment is coming out as something really important. People have slowed down and they've looked at things like, you know, there's less air pollution, you know, they've noticed the native birds and that, and they think, maybe this is what's important. It's not, you know, the rush of going everywhere. So I think it's a big win in a silly way that we're having at the moment.
And we've obviously got a few draft policy statements still to be released and firmed up going into the election. Of course, the Essential Freshwater and the Indigenous Biodiversity policy. What's your thoughts, Mark, on how policymakers should interact and communicate, you know, that shared values that we can all move together with an understanding of farming practices at the same time? I
think policymakers have been listening. I think, you know, they have gone out to the community and said, what's important to you? You know, I think, you know, the government has done a good job at listening to what we want. Yeah, I'm reasonably happy with what's been going on.
I think for farmers to engage, it's about having clear messages. So if farmers know what the expectations are, know what they've got to do, and know what support is available, I think it really helps.
Yeah, you need to get involved. It's no use complaining after the event. You need to get involved while these, things are going on.
That's some actually very clear and sensible messages. Thank you so much, Mark and Felicity Brough. Before you head away, we're getting the national rain gauge. Waikato's been extremely dry. Please tell me you've had some rain.
Yep, we've had 60 mils today, so things are looking good. I mean, we feel for our cousins in the Hawke's Bay, but, there's not a lot we can do about it.
Oh, some positive news there, 60 mils in the Waikato. Wonderful place there at Waitomo. And that's Felicity and Mark. Congratulations again on behalf of us all, the 2020 Waikato Ballance Farm Environment Award winners. Whilst we connect with our next guests from Plant a Seed for Safety and Safer Farms, this has been released today by Alex Thomas and Harriet Bremner. Here is a great on-farm story, as I'm going to give a plug. The Voyager Media finalist produced Ash Robinson for Global HQ on the story of the 2019 Northland Ballance Environment Award winners. In their story, it's Patrick Malley and his family growing green and gold kiwi fruit, as well as 4 types of berries hydroponically up north. This is Sarah's Country.
As farmers and growers and orchardists, we're not good at tooting our own trumpet. All the farmers I know would rather just knuckle down and get the job done. I think that's the way it's been done for a long period of time. I just don't think it's the way that we can rely on anymore. If we stay quiet, people will make decisions about our business for us without our input, and those decisions could be disastrous. We need to be getting out there more and actually saying, hey, this is actually what we do here. Come and have a look and become informed. I'm Patrick Malley, and here with my family we're proud kiwi fruit and berry fruit growers based in Mangatapuri, Northland. We've got a 37 hectare orchard here. We grow kiwi fruit here, both gold and green, and then also a range of berry fruit, raspberries, blackberries, blueberries, and also soulberries, which is a golden raspberry. We employ around about 57 full-time staff at the moment, and then on top of that we've got a seasonal labour force that can work for us for anything up to 9 months. We top it off with a small amount of backpackers for our real peak seasonal periods. The different cultures make a really exciting place to work. When we moved here, there was a high unemployment rate in Whangarei, so we wanted to do something to employ locals and get them into work. That's part of the reason why we've put a whole bunch of crops together in a diversified operation to give that sort of consistency and security of work. It takes out a lot of the fear that especially locals have about whether I'm going to have enough hours for this week and whether I get enough money for this week. We've got a team of people that have been with us now for nearly a decade, some of them. The sense of buy-in and ownership that they have and the sense of worth they get from how much they've achieved and what they've done and to what quality it's a really good validation of all the things that I see in this business. It's a really good mirror to say that, yeah, what I feel is experienced by all these other people as well. The real, top of mind thing for me at the moment is the social license to operate. Working with plants, working with animals, working on the land was just by default good, and that's changed. We've lost that automatic right that we're doing good work outdoors. There are a lot of people out there that have heard one buzzword and have taken it to mean everything. A great example for me is the differences between conventional versus organics versus spray-free. There's a whole bunch of nuances around those 3 different things, but consumers really just look at the top level stuff sometimes. Storytelling as opposed to advertising is probably the big difference there. The most real version of storytelling comes from the farmers and growers themselves. It's the reason why I wanted to go to our in-store tastings, because I wanted to say this is my produce and this is why I'm proud of it. It doesn't come free, that connection, a bit of running around for sure. but it is very valuable.
All right, Joel, your mother Joanne, she's a regular watcher of Sarah's Country with her breakfast near the beach in Belfast.
Yep.
Question, has your mother taught you, I know she's taught you lots of good things, like your manners, and you're a very kind boy, but has he taught you how good life can be when you listen to your wife?
I haven't had to learn that lesson yet in my life.
Maybe you can have some preparation though.
I guess, yeah.
Are you sort of one of those guys that sort of would kind of just nod along and say yes, or you need to be right?
Oh no, I'm happy to just nod along.
Of course you are.
Let it happen. I work for you, so you know.
Thanks, Joel. I'm not that bad. Right, to save a life, listen to your wife. That's the key message of a new health and safety movement for rural women being launched today in New Zealand. Harriet Bremner from Safer Farms has partnered with Australians Alex Thomas to bring the hashtag Plant a Seed for Safety project across the ditch, and they both join us now. I'm super excited to have them both. Welcome.
Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
It's fantastic. Now I'm going to start with you, Harriet. Firstly, I want to go to your journey, Harriet, from the Hacker Valley to Safer Farms. There's been a few things that's happened over the course of the time. Can you briefly explain your journey to become what I believe is the National Ambassador for On-Farm Safety?
So I was a primary school teacher in the Hectare Valley down south in South Island, and my life took a very, very quick turn when I lost my long-term partner in a farming accident. Now, I went back teaching for a while. I went overseas, ran away, did all those things. And then I realised that I had this dream of writing children's books. So I started with a memorial book for James, Bob and Pops, and that's a story about friendship. From there, I then released my second book, Be Safe, Be Seen, about teaching children to make good decisions when they're out on the farm. And this is all about tackling safety from a really practical point of view, because we know that box ticking and paperwork doesn't save lives. And recently I've released Use Your Voice, which is alongside the Will to Live Charitable Trust. So really exciting journey with my books, but along the way I bumped into Alex Thomas when I got approached for a job with Safer Farms by the amazing Tony Watson. And from there I've been on this incredible journey for hashtag Save a Life, Listen to Your Wife. And what a better thing than for people to listen to women.
Well, you've got a hard sell. I don't actually think. A lot of New Zealand rural males are gorgeous human beings and, of course, do pay attention to the input that can be had. But, of course, this Plant a Seed for Safety, I think, has a lovely, subtle message. Time to bring in Alex Thomas now from across the ditch. Alex, love to hear your story.
Hello, thank you so much for having us, Sarah. So I'm originally from a sheep station in South Australia's northeast pastoral. And not dissimilar to Harriet's story, I unfortunately know what sort of on-farm or on-station tragedy looks and feels like, as I've been a carer, a part-time carer for my disabled father since I was around 15 years old. But the positive from that is that I'm now, just as relentlessly determined as Harriet to make sure that rural men and women make safer and healthier choices. And a part of that is planting seeds in the minds of men, or everyone in general, to make those choices. And so that's where the Plant a Seed for Safety project was born from.
All right, we all know how stubborn males can be, and we're obviously being very sexist here, but let's just cut to the chase. Say for instance, Alex, we've got some pretty steep hills that they are cultivating compared to probably the rolling hills of South Australia. And you say, do you really think you should be going up there? And how much does that actually have an impact and over time make a difference to be able to plant that seed?
Look, I think we just have to continually ask the question. And I think with the rising of rural women, we're all becoming more confident in our roles, in our businesses, in our communities, and in our capacity as leaders. And I think we're already having lots and lots of conversations about health and safety. It's just about turning the volume up and perhaps shifting the narrative away from paperwork and box ticking back to sort of the practical stuff that really makes sense in the context of rural industries and communities.
Harriet, of course, we don't want to sound like, nagging, but how is the appropriate way, do you believe, Safer Farms and your messages can be to communicate in an effective way that we get it?
Look, well, I like to tell stories, and some of my friends laugh at that. But, storytelling is something that people have been doing for generations, and we know that stories get carried through from person to person when they have that real authentic meaning to them. So I really truly believe that what Alex has come up with in terms of attacking health and safety and wellbeing from a storytelling perspective is super powerful, because you're not just going in there and saying, you're going to get fined if you're not wearing a helmet on your quad bike. That's just going to get heckles up, right? So if we can get people sharing genuine stories, then I think people are going to stand up and listen to these and really take away messages from them, because, if something's genuine and authentic, then people listen.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it's about not being embarrassed to share your near misses and probably celebrate them so that you can pass on to other people how to avoid.
Yeah, and, there's ways in which we can talk about these things, and with Safer Farms, we're approaching it from a different angle, and we're not talking about near misses. We're talking about the shit that kills you. And it's actually the dangerous stuff out there that we're doing all the time, every single day, and we do forget how dangerous it is because we do it all the time, and it becomes second nature. So let's just make sure that, we're having enough sleep, we're eating well, all our well-being's intact initially, so that when we do go out to do our job, we can make good decisions and reasonable ones when we're out on farm.
Alex, your involvement with rural women in Australia and, of course, travelling across and hosting a lot of events. What is some of those key messages where women can communicate, of course, as mothers, that, we don't want to have you lose your father?
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think it's, as Harriet says, it's about keeping it real. And there are lots of common themes in the stories that we've had so far. And thank you very much, Sarah, for sharing yours. It's amazing. But some of the more sort of paramount ones have been women really understanding and appreciating the need to provide a comfortable environment where other people feel safe to speak up. And I guess the other part is around the regular conversations around the dinner table at Smoko, standing in the sheep yards, behind, even in the car on the way to wherever it is you're going. The importance of mental health is also very common, and of course, charging the UHF before you go out for the day and maintaining regular comms is also quite common.
What is your mission from today, the launch? What would you like to see flood in on this campaign, and people watching and how they can support the campaign?
Oh, look, success to me is really just a vibrant conversation about health and safety that isn't about paperwork and box ticking or policies and penalties and fines, completely shifting the pendulum in the other direction and getting women to lead that conversation. But moving forwards from here, if you're interested in getting involved, head on to plantaseedforsafety.com, and I implore all.
Oh, she's just frozen on us. And she had such a clear internet connection. I'd say actually one of the best we've had, Joel, up to date. I'd love to know what broadband speed she's in. I think we may have to go. Oh, you there, Alex? At least she's got a beautiful resting face.
Oh, no.
Oh, isn't that frustrating? Harriet, would you like to be able to close on Alex's behalf?
So as Alex was saying, it's about changing the stigma that we've got attached to health and safety in both of our countries, and realising that at the end of the day, the main priority is to put people first. Take the paperwork and the box ticking out of your mind, put people first, and realise that our main goal is that we want people to come home alive at the end of the day so that they can sit down and have dinner with their families. And that's our main aim, yeah.
Alex is back with us now. Thank you so much, Alex, for your wonderful initiative, Plant a Seed for Safety, originating out of Australia. And how's that for some Anzac spirit? We share the same trials and tribulations as our Australian farming cousins. So coming together around a common message is fantastic. It's plantaseedforsafety.com. Go over and share your own journey and being able to lessen the stats where agriculture is the second largest industry of health and safety deaths in New Zealand. Now, I want to head across to the poll tonight briefly before we head to our next guest. The question tonight is the New Zealand primary sector getting the financial and regulatory support they need to pull our economy through? To be honest, the dials haven't moved much, but there's some very interesting comments evolving under the poll in regards to, what we can do to avoid for government support without, of course, subsidies, because New Zealand, I think, is now actually pretty proud of our ability to compete internationally without any subsidies. And of course, you can participate with some suggestions there on what you think we can do to support the farming industry on that. Now, we'll have questions for Minister Damien O'Connor joining us live towards the end of the show. I'd love your questions in the comments below. Underneath the Facebook or YouTube live comments. I don't actually see them anywhere else across the web while I'm live. But before that, we're going to catch up with the 27-year-old dairy farmer who successfully landed the role to showcase best practice dairy farming to our Auckland urban cousins. This is Sarah's Country. Now, as I said before the break, we are loving your comments below, and of course we're doing New Zealand's national rain gauge tonight, 22 inches, not sure, in Martinborough. I don't know, actually that just shows my understanding of metrics. Just ignore that. Now, obviously, a few people saying about Harriet's book. Where can you get that? Go to gertsandpops.com. It's there's quite a few different wonderful books that she's got out there. If you did get a good dose of rain, I want to know in the comments below, and of course, put your location down as well. And I really feel for you if you haven't, because of course it's not that easy. We are talking tonight about the government's support, financially and regulatory, to support New Zealand's rural sector pulling our economy through. And Brett Mathers says, no, they're trying to push more regulation like the freshwater plan through the RMA, and they're keeping pressure on us farmers with the zero carbon bill. Just seems like more tax and cost. Daniel Mickelson, thank you for asking a question there about how we can proceed without handouts and subsidies. And Graham Lowe says, we don't want money. We need the anti-farming policies and attitudes of the current government to seize. Earl Milligan says, the sort that circumstances beyond farmers' control, droughts and floods, etc., at the moment, seeing payouts to other businesses on the basis of the coronavirus is outside their control too. But if a farmer receives cash payments, then it's a subsidy. And so therefore, how about truckloads of hay? That is what Earl wants, and I think that's what a lot of people in Hawke's Bay would like as well. Now, heading to our next guest, it's called the Donald Pearson Farm, owned by the New Zealand Young Farmers, and has welcomed a couple of weeks ago new farm manager, but it was after a lengthy search. The board, of course, wanted somebody with a passion for New Zealand young farmers, and they found Sam Waugh, 27, and he took up the role on 20th of April of the 74-hectare Auckland dairy farm, bringing years of his experience in dairy farming as well as different farming systems to find, of course, the right person for this beautiful bequeathed farm to the organisation of New Zealand Young Farmers. And Sam joins us now on Sarah's Country. Evening, sir.
G'day. Good evening.
Firstly, Sam, what has been your involvement, say, from young farmer days right through your farming career to date? Obviously, 27 hasn't been that long.
Yeah. So I guess I've got involved with young farmers when I went to Lincoln Uni. That's when I first got involved with the organisation, and then sort of progressed into various different roles within the organisation after that as well. So, at one stage I was regional chairman for the Tasman region, and then also moved up to was elected as a board member for the organisation as well for a few years.
I was just thinking, I know this is really off topic, but we had a really good feed delivered because everyone's doing delivery now from the Grouse. You would have spent a few nights there?
Yeah, there's a few nights at the Grouse, yeah.
Of course, being a part of
it. Feed, actually.
It is a good feed. Oh, it's beautiful. So I do want to give a shout out. Famous Grouse is delivering around Lincoln if you're watching. Now, Sam, on to the Donald Pearson farm. You were in the UK prior to coming home. What was the motivation to apply for this job?
I guess for me, I was really excited about the opportunity this farm offers and the extra, I guess, non-farming side of it. So looking around how we educate and involve urban people into agriculture. And that's sort of what really sparked my interest with this farm. There's a bit of work being done around what that will look like in the future. So to be able to, I guess, help develop that side of the business is something that really excites me.
For those of them people who are not watching, I mean, it did actually happen quite, I'd say, under the radar at the time. I obviously knew about it. Terry Copeland was the CEO of Young Farmers at the time when the bequest happened. But could you give us a bit of a story about Donald Pearson and his generosity to want to donate to an organisation like Young Farmers?
Yeah, so I unfortunately never got to meet Donald myself, but I've heard a lot of very positive things about him and what he wanted this farm to do. So he was very involved with his local community and inviting a lot of school children and things onto the farm to learn about farming. And he wanted that legacy to continue and to develop, past the time when he passed away himself. So he worked with young farmers for a little bit of time, trying to, I guess, understand get young farmers to understand what his passions were and what he wanted the farm to achieve. But yeah, unfortunately, he passed away before he could see that develop.
So what's the sort of development underway? It's 100 Jersey and 10 shorthorn cows. There's a commercial dairy farm on 74 hectares near Mangarea. And what would be the next part? Because obviously having a commercial dairy farm and then, as we were just speaking about, health and safety of having the public on your farm on a regular basis?
Yeah, so there's a bit of work that we're doing around that at the moment. And I guess getting a bit of work done to get the farm up to a standard where we can interact with the public in a way that you don't normally do with a normal farm. So there's been a bit of work developing that, and that's going to continue going. And then the farm board at the moment is sort of working around what the strategy would be and how we sort of interact with the public and help educate people going forward as well. So,
talking about that, and just to close, Sam, we have Minister Damien O'Connor on next, and he may be listening right now. What sort of government support would you like to see going into getting more young people into the farming sector?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I think, I guess, helping to, fund some of the farms that, like what we're trying to achieve here. As well as, I know there's other farms around the country which are also working along similar sort of goals. So I think part of it is around the funding, but part of it's also I guess, around providing, what's the right word? Publicity around that as well, into urban areas, and particularly, I suppose, into schools as well. So they're probably the two areas I think would help.
Thank you so much, Sam Waugh, a 27-year-old who's taken on a very ambitious goal of being the farm manager of a lovely farm outside of Auckland, now owned under a trust with the New Zealand Young Farmer Organisation. My apologies. Right, to close the show, we have live on Sarah's Country taking your questions and mine on how we are going to support the rural sector that we are so much trying to hang our hats on to financially support the future of New Zealand's economy post-COVID-19. This is Sarah's Country.
Every morning, Kiwi farmers wake up to produce higher quality food. Yet, every night, some Kiwi families are going to sleep hungry. Meet the Need is a charity founded by farmers, and it's here to change all that. We're about New Zealand farmers feeding New Zealand families by donating a small part of what we grow when we can. You can help us make sure no one in New Zealand goes to sleep hungry again. Visit meettheneed.org and follow us on social.
Even when everything changes, some things will always stay the same. The cows still need milking, the economy still needs dairy, and dairy farmers will always have what it takes. Whatever you need to keep milking, our job during the lockdown is to get it to you, because we know what it takes.
Aotearoa, New Zealand has always been a land that has provided for its people, a land of abundance and opportunity. Our dedicated team at Ag Research know that embracing kaitiakitanga will see this continue for future generations. The work we do is transforming the way we farm and revolutionising the way New Zealanders care for our animals and for our land. We work hard to create the world's most desirable food and bio-based products through smart, sustainable farming, led by some of the world's most phenomenal research and informed by the consumers who benefit from this passion. Through a focus on environmental sustainability and climate change initiatives, this passion will allow our work to continue for generations to come. Our proficiencies in research run wide, from seeds to pest control, high-value food production to practical farming systems and quality assurance. From the smallest rural land use project to international research programs, our science and technology innovations drive the prosperity of our precious agricultural sector. It's through this research that New Zealand retains its position as a scientifically advanced global agricultural leader. Our commitment to the growth of our wider New Zealand economy, its people, and the kaitiakitanga of Aotearoa is at the very heart of every scientific innovation and creation we deliver. Ag Research, firmly grounded in this land, these waters, looking to what's in the stars and the future. Ata matai, matai whetu.
Well, of course, in lockdown, it hasn't been that bad. Most of us with a bit of land have been pretty proud of at least one or two major projects that we've been able to get on top of. Usually it was saved to the winter. So, of course, I want to just jump straight into it, being in lockdown. Now, going into week 6 is no other than, of course, our Minister for Agriculture, Damien O'Connor. You can't have spent the whole time inside, though, I imagine, Damien.
No, most of the day that I do try and get out as quickly as I can. And so the best project is about 300 posts. We were growing boysenberries and we're pulling them out. So it's about an acre and a half that we pulled the posts out, worked the paddock over, got it sown down. We just had enough rain and it struck in about 3 days ago. So I'm watching grass grow. So it's actually really great.
Oh, I think there'll be a lot of people around the country that will be extremely jealous of that comment right now, Damien.
We did. We got 25 mils last night, which is a huge boost for. This is on the top part of the electorate around Nelson, Melbourne. So it's been very dry here, and it's certainly you've seen the grass move. A little bit of rain a couple of days ago, and certainly it's boosted the growth.
Fantastic. Now, as we've been saying throughout the show, the main sector of our economy that has been allowed to continue to operate under level 4 of our lockdown was, of course, the food production sector of farming and the immediate essential services that supported them. There is never 100% year in farming where everything lines up. And of course, once in a generation, there's a year like 2020 where all the seams decide to fall apart across the whole garment. 6 weeks and the pressures are starting to really bite, and the economic recession and unemployment predictions are looking like a horror movie. No amount of reruns of The Simpsons will get out of your head before bed. We have a few topics, and we're going to get through tonight to close the show with Minister of Agriculture, Damien O'Connor, who is, of course, joining us now. Damien, let's start with these frightening unemployment numbers and the dream that, of course, all of them are going to transition over to the gaping hole in the primary sector. Is that really possible? Because, I mean, we've been talking about this gaping hole now for many years.
Look, in the short time we've seen, people have gone from forestry into horticulture. Quite a few Kiwis have lined up to help with the kiwi fruit harvest. And indeed, the apple harvest has been completed virtually. With no major shortages of labour, and many of those positions have been filled by Kiwis. There still are quite a few migrant workers across the country, but they will probably leave, and we're not going to see them back into the country for quite some time. So there's a real need to get people into the primary sectors, horticulture, viticulture, dairy, even across the wider farming sector. And it's up to us to provide the right incentives, the right story about all the opportunities and actually the great life you can have outdoors if you come into a farming or horticulture or viticulture job. So we do have a bit of a sales job ahead of us, and then we've got to do some training. And one of the things I've asked for is both Telford and Tauratahi were run down. Very sad, institutions battered around a bit. We've got them up and running again, only just. And so we've got to boost the capability at both Tauratahi and Telford over the next few months, and we're working on that, to provide short-term training that may enable people who may never go onto a farm to think about going into one of these jobs.
Do you think the business model around our training institutions needs to be readdressed to be sustainable?
It does, and that's why Chris Hipkins, as Minister of Education, has had a massive review of vocational education, and all the polytechs, all the ITOs, and all the training establishments like Telford and Tauratahi have come under review. We know it's been broken. We're working on and getting up in place a better model. In fact, the primary sector has got a strategy around training, the first one alongside construction, so we're in a really good space to actually work between the industries, between the new structure in vocational education and training, and make sure we get the people we need.
Okay, so in terms of course, what is scarily being reported as nearly the worst drought in New Zealand's history, there has been a bit of criticism, but an opportunity to potentially relook at how we direct support, and by no means is this under any word of the word subsidy for drought support into the right places. Damien, you funded directly into the Rural Support Trust and said, here's some money, go for your life. And then you've had money going to farm advisors, here you go for your life in regards to supporting this. Farmers just tangibly need the logistical pipeline open up to get the silos of grain sitting in Canterbury to where they're needed, but it's just costing far too much. What do you think that we can do to actually put that support directly where it's needed?
I mean, early decision making on farms is crucial, and I have to say, in discussing with officials, Rural Support Trust and others, there's still too many farmers who have hung on. They've wanted to get more weight on their stock, hope for a bit of rain, and it hasn't come, particularly in places like, I guess, southern Hawke's Bay, and we've had some of the Paeruas further south of that. There've been some rain, so some animals have shifted around, and that will be assisted by the sale yards opening up. But also people can trade online. There's a new world that we're all living in, and farmers have to get used to trading and trusting online trading, and that'll be a new opportunity. In the meantime, they do need feed for the stock that are stuck there. Look, the meat companies and the freezing works are almost back up to full capacity, and those that aren't yet will be, within the next week or two. So that's good news. It will relieve some of the pressure. But the grain, and I've just asked today MPI to get an idea of the quantum of grain that is available to make sure we can get it into the right place. We've put up online and through Rural Support Trusts, working with the stock and station agencies, federated farmers, to make sure that where there is feed, farmers know about it and can buy it. So we've been doing all the coordination we can. But in the end, it will be probably more expensive to shift some of that feed at the moment. The banks have to sit down with the farmers. I think in this COVID situation, every part of our economy has to be considerate. We're trying to encourage the banks to be considerate. The word is that they have eased off at a time they were putting real pressure on farmers. So we have to make use of all those opportunities to get through this period, and hopefully the rain will come while it's still warm enough to get a little bit of growth in some of these areas.
Talking about logistics, I mean, I remember back to the 2013 drought, and it was in a different place than it is now. It wasn't, it's up to this person or up to this person. It was a real collaborative approach to be able to coordinate the logistics of containers and trucking, and the industry really came together, but where they needed the ministry was to basically pull those things together and do it through someone like Farmlands to underwrite that credit facility to ensure that the grain harvest people got paid, of course, because no one here is asking for money. They just want some form of logistics, and not, of course, a department that says you should have planned earlier, because we could have said the same to our liquor stores and our Chinese takeaways. No one saw COVID-19 coming and the backlog that was going to come. There's people with 30 to 50% of lambs still on the ground 1st of May that shouldn't be there. And that is not directly about fee budgeting in February, Minister.
And no, look, I appreciate, some people have got caught out. We have been helping all the way through. We haven't laid it on to other people. We've been doing the coordination. We don't have a pot of money to hand out to farmers who need feed. And that's always been the situation for a long time. But really happy to help with logistics, working with feed farmers, with other people to make sure that we put the right feed in the right place to the farmers who need it. And if we truck feed around to the wrong place, not very helpful either. The fact that it's been dry across, most of New Zealand has made it harder this time. There's not feed readily available in other regions we can truck. And I think that's been at the core of the difference with this drought through New Zealand.
I am of support of online livestock trading, was involved in it 5 years ago, Minister. However, I am in full support of reopening of sale yards, because forcing people to adapt to an online technology rapidly when there's an animal welfare and farmer welfare issue is a lot to ask. And we've had Frankton sale yards demonstrating what under strict protocol can look like by agents. But are you working closely with the upper management of these companies to ensure that we don't have skinny animals in mud this winter, which we do not need on social media?
Well, the companies decide themselves whether they want to open up their sale yards. There are protocols. The whole country has been focusing on health protocols that prevent the spread of COVID, and we've got on top of it. And with if we stick to what we've been doing for another couple of weeks, hopefully we'll be in a position where we have a whole lot more movement around the country, businesses back up and running, and actually have a very good international reputation for what we can do. So we're working with all the people across all the sectors, and in primary sectors, those people who own the sale yards, stock and station agents, those who have got online trading. We just have to encourage people to, take the necessary steps. And what is, a time we would never have ever imagined. So this is tough and challenging times, and we have been lucky that we've been able to carry on, and for the most part, do normal operations, do normal activities in the primary sectors when the rest of the economies actually had to shut down in many places.
To close, Sarah, I am going to ask you the poll question tonight. Do you believe that the government is providing the right financial and regulatory support to the sector that will pull us through the economy recession?
Look, I'm not quite sure what you wanted. I was farming in the 80s when the subsidies were taken off. I haven't met many farmers that want to go back to that situation. We certainly step in and help. There's a huge amount of money going to research and development, into coordination, into biosecurity. We've done a lot to ensure that the primary sector can move on and continue to operate and prosper. What we don't want, and farmers don't want us to do, is to step in and tell farmers what to do. And ultimately, those business decisions are made on farm, and we'll be there with the infrastructure, a huge amount of money going from government, from taxpayers into infrastructure, rural and urban, to make sure that our country can, move beyond COVID, utilise the ongoing opportunity from the primary sectors and create more export wealth, and we'll all be better off. And it's great that we have been able to continue. We've got to get more value for everything we do, open up those markets and ensure that we reward everyone for their efforts across agriculture and horticulture.
And no one is asking for subsidies, Minister, at all. I think that the combination of events is extremely severe in regards to farming across the 80s. The only difference to me is that, from my mind, and of course I was a young nipper then, is extremely high interest rates. But the amount of a pandemic as well as a recession and, of course, the most extreme drought is, of course, something to be concerned. That's not going to, of course, be financially supported by this government, but at the same time, I don't really like the rhetoric of this. It's the fittest person, the person that can come through this will be the winner in terms of survival of the fittest, is what I'm trying to say. We can't afford our farming community, who have been under extreme stress for not only this year but several years now, to collapse under that stress just because you should have been able to plan for this.
Well, look, actually prices have been pretty good for the last few years. Export earnings are actually at record, and we, even through the early COVID period, we've only seen a slight drop in export earnings. So we've been doing a really good job. Costs have gone up on farm in some areas, but there's a lot of farmers who've been doing really well. They've been paying down debt and are well positioned. But the drought is something that no one, of course, can predict, and no one can actually manage in terms of, we need the rainfall, and if we can share feed around and trade it, then that helps a whole lot of farmers in different places. It has come from the top of New Zealand to the bottom. It's a tough period for drought, and of course in Southland we saw the flood. So not easy, but actually commodity prices have held up reasonably well, and many people are saying that we just got to get on and turn that into a better future, and that's indeed what we're doing.
I've had a question come in here. There's the concept around flight to trust. How well positioned are we?
Flight to trust? I can't quite work that one.
My apologies. I'll have to clarify that. But there's been a whole campaign around it today. But I will move on to another question. But I think. No, obviously hasn't popped up there. Right. But no, thank you so much for taking the time. Of course, it is a stressful time. What would be your key messages, Minister, that is obviously going to come out in the next couple of weeks or so about supporting the rural economy so that they feel that this government is right behind them to achieve that?
Look, I think we always have said that, and we're at the core of our economy. We have been for 150 years. We will be into the future. The fact that we, deemed essential services across all the primary industries, bar forestry, meant that we recognise the importance, and it's enabled us to go through the seasonal challenges that we have, to carry on into the spring and hopefully be in a far better position to help the rest of the country through COVID, provide some jobs, provide some new career opportunities for New Zealanders, and all be better off for it.
And we'll have to look forward to, of course, that budget that's going to be announced shortly too, to see what numbers we can put around your promises, Minister.
Yes, as I say, I don't think that people want subsidies out there. They want good, wise infrastructural spend. They want research and development in the right areas. They want to make sure that we've got, good water quality. We've got access to water storage and things like this. And these are the projects that we're working on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And of course, we will be able to catch up with you in due course and, of course, keep a bit of an update on that lifestyle block and how it's all progressing. That is Damien O'Connor, Minister of Agriculture, and it's all we've got time for tonight. If you've missed any of the previous shows of Sarah's Country, of course, on demand on podcast and on Farmers Weekly's YouTube channel as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. A nice wee range of guests, I reckon, Joel. We've got everything there. I'd actually say we've got some wonderful young people across the sector that are really contributing to the future of our country. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree.
Including you. That's Joel Rock, of course, my producer there, keeping me live and online to you Monday through Thursday from 7 o'clock. Really enjoy having your input, and I certainly have been enjoying getting your emails and your messages in the inbox. They're all increasing every week. It's nice to know who is joining us. So if you want to flick us an email, it's sarah@pereamedia.com. So good night, go well, and of course, as I open the show, let's just think about how grateful we are. We're COVID-free for a day. Let's make sure that continues. And when things are tough, it's really important to realise the little things that we're fortunate to have, that we're all in this together. We got this, New Zealand. This is Sarah's Country.
This is Sarah's Country.